current of electricity. Oh God, have mercy upon me.
4 teenagers went for a walk in the woods near the University of Tennessee campus on the eve of Friday the 13th, 1995. It's believed that 3 of them were members of some sort of satanic sect, while the 4th was just an ordinary Florida student looking for some free weed. Unfortunately, that wasn't what she would receive. Welcome to Guilty or Not, where we take a look at the world's most gruesome cases, analyse them, and try to figure out why the perpetrator did their horrible deed. Grab a cup of coffee or tea, find a cosy place, and let's dive into the case of Christa Pike. Christa Gail Pike was born in West Virginia on March the 10th, 1976. Her grandmother was a devout Christian, and the slaughterhouse where her grandfather worked was her playground as a child. It has been reported that Christa was abused as a child by Ernest, a friend of her grandmother's. It's also possible that this abuse began while she was still in diapers, which is tragic. Christa is believed to have attempted suicide for the first time at the age of 12, following the death of her grandmother. Later, it was revealed that she attempted to cope by self-mutilating in various ways. When she had to move in with her mother, Carissa, who was a registered nurse and allegedly an alcoholic, things only got worse for her. To put it mildly, their relationship was a strained one. Christa's mother ended up taking her daughter to a mental health professional because she was concerned about her well-being. However, Christa's mental health was not helped by most of the therapists she saw. Her mother's revolving door of men only exasperated the situation. When she was 18, Christa enrolled in the University of Tennessee's Knoxville campus's Job Corps. In the 1990s, Job Corps was referred to as a vocational training centre for troubled youth, providing them with a path to a promising future. Christa was there to follow in her mother's footsteps and pursue a career in nursing. Christa would meet Colleen Slemmer, a fellow student in the same program at this location. It would be incorrect to describe them as friends, because Christa was dating her then 17-year-old boyfriend, and it seemed that Colleen was looking to seduce him. Tadaro Ship, the girl's boyfriend, found himself in the middle of a love triangle. One time, Christa had gone home for the holidays while Tadaro stayed in Knoxville. He then allegedly started to give Colleen some attention. Of course, Christa never knew this, but she was suspicious, so an idea popped into her head. Her so-called friend was out to get her boyfriend. Eventually, it seems that Christa wanted to make things right with Colleen and invited her to smoke some weed together. The only catch was that the stash was hidden in the woods and they should go and find it first. The night before she seemingly wanted to make up with Colleen, Christa told her friend Kim that she was planning to kill the poor girl. On top of that, her motive for the plan was because she, quote, just felt mean that day, end quote. But it wasn't just Christa that was swept away by the occult. Her boyfriend admitted a few days prior to what was about to happen that he needed to make a human sacrifice soon because the celestial bodies were aligned. On January the 12th at about 8 p.m, the group of 4 friends, Christa Pike, Tadaro Ship, Colleen Slemmer, and Shadela Peterson, left their dorms and went towards the woods to find the hidden stash. Without suspecting anything, Colleen happily followed the other 3 into the woods, thinking that nothing bad would happen to her. She was, after all, among friends. The students eventually arrived in an isolated area of Tyson Park, near their campus. In that spot, Colleen would be the victim of one of the most horrific acts that ever took place in Tennessee. Christa suddenly changed her demeanour. She turned around at Colleen and accused her of trying to steal her boyfriend. The accused quickly denied everything, but seeing that tensions were rising, she quickly realised that she wasn't brought there to smoke pot. Tadaro and Christa didn't come empty-handed. They were armed with a meat cleaver and a box cutter at the time, while Shadela was on the lookout. A fight broke out. Christa slammed Colleen's face into her knee. The victim fell to the ground, and without wasting any time, Christa started to punch and kick her without any sign of mercy. As she was being beaten up, Colleen cried and asked why she would do that to her. Eventually, the beating stopped, and she managed to get up and try to run away to safety. Of course, she didn't get far. The first time she managed to escape resulted in Christa cutting her with the meat cleaver. The second and last time she tried to run away from danger, Todaro pinned her to the ground. It was then when Christa used the box cutter to slice Colleen's stomach open. The girl begged for her life, promising that if she would let her go, she was willing to walk back to Florida without picking up her stuff, and she'll never have to see her again. But it didn't work. Christa told her to shut up, admitting that it's harder to hurt someone when they were talking. In the heat of the moment, while blood was spraying everywhere, Christa suddenly stopped. She thought she'd heard a noise in the woods, close to where they were performing the gruesome act. The brutality stopped for a few moments as she went to investigate, but after seeing that no one else was around, she returned to finish the job. Christa proceeded to cut Colleen's throat several times, but the victim wasn't done fighting for her life. She managed to find the strength and begged to be let go once more, before getting up and trying to run away yet again. As Colleen was slowly getting away, Christa threw a rock at her, hitting her right in the back of the head. Her boyfriend then joined in. The girl fell to the ground. After 30 minutes, Todaro took the box cutter and started to carve something into Colleen's chest. It was a pentagram. Medical examiners later stated that her heart was still beating when the carving took place. This was indicated by the fact that the area surrounding each wound was red. Colleen was still alive after Todaro left his mark on her chest. She suffered the ordeal for nearly an hour. But Christa had enough. She picked up a chunk of broken asphalt and started to hit Colleen in the head. Her blood started spilling all over the ground, and finally she was freed of all the pain she'd endured, and she took her last breath. Shadola continued to keep a lookout while the other two dragged the lifeless body to a nearby area before being placed on a pile of dirt. Before leaving the scene of the crime, Christa decided to take a symbol of her victory with her. That's when she grabbed a piece of Colleen's fragmented skull and placed it in the pocket of her jacket. According to legend, Satanists believe that the soul could not be liberated unless the body was complete. Colleen's spirit would be imprisoned if a portion of her body was taken away. They then took Colleen's black gloves and 2 of her identification cards. When Todaro and Christa discovered bloodstains on their clothes, they wiped dirt from their shoes over them. They proceeded to a nearby Texaco gas station to get rid of the ID cards and gloves after leaving the remote area of the University of Tennessee campus. When they were back in their dorms, they acted like nothing had occurred. Only 3 of the 4 students who had signed out returned. Christa ran into Kim Iloilo, her friend. She said Christa looked happy. She was giggling and singing as she twirled around in circles. Christa was like a child, ready to talk about the horrors she had just perpetrated earlier that night. She told Kim about what happened and even showed her the piece of Colleen's skull that she had brought with her. A university employee discovered Colleen's butchered remains the next morning. In the beginning, the man was convinced that he had come upon the remains of an animal. When he noticed the torso, though, he screamed in fear. On Friday the 13th, Knoxville police and the university's campus police started investigating at around 8 a.m. Colleen's head was described by one of the first arriving policemen by saying that, quote, "I believed I was staring at her face, but everything was so terribly twisted that I couldn't be sure," end quote. After the murder, Christa was irresponsible in more ways than one. The next day, she went back to the scene of the crime for a second look, only to be refused access to the area of the woods she had meant to visit. On a university administrator's desk afterwards, she left behind her jacket, which included the piece of Colleen's skull. The police discovered the skull fragment when the jacket was turned over to them. Todaro Ship, Christa Pike, and Shadala Peterson were all detained within the first 36 hours. Christa was questioned first, but she did the weirdest thing. Instead of not speaking or denying, she started talking and admitted that she was to blame for what happened. The entire confession was as long as 42 pages, but the police found further evidence. They stumbled upon Colleen's blood, which had stained Christa's jeans. The murderer then cooperated with officers and took them to the place where she discarded the IDs and the gloves. After investigating Taddaro's room, a satanic Bible was found. The evidence was more than enough, including the statement that Christa gave. The trial took place on March the 22nd, 1996, and Bill Crabtree, the prosecution lawyer, stated in his opening statement that the act is so vile, atrocious and despicable that it rivals anything seen in movies, read in a novel, or dreamt in a nightmare. Christa cried continuously during the trial, but the jury convicted her in only a couple of hours. She was described by the jury as having an angel's face, but a devil's heart. Christa received the death penalty on March the 22nd, 1996, after being found guilty of first-degree murder. Taddaro was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. And Shadala received probation since she agreed to become an informant against the other two. She also pled guilty for being an accessory after the fact. On that day, when she was only 20 years old, Christa became the youngest woman to be sentenced to death in the history of the United States. Christa then wrote a letter to her boyfriend, saying that she couldn't believe what had happened to her. She stated that she was being so nice by hitting her with a piece of asphalt so she could die quicker, and in return all they did was sentence her to the electric chair. Clearly, Christa didn't think she deserved her sentence. But her menacing ways didn't stop there. While in prison, she attempted to kill again, a fellow inmate by the name of Patricia Jones. Now, 25 years later, Christa is still locked up in her cell, contemplating what she had done as a student during that horrific night. Let us know in the comments what your take is on the case. Was she mentally ill and that's what led her to kill Colleen? Did she do it because of satanic reasons or because of jealousy? We're very curious to know if you consider her truly guilty or not. Until next time, keep your eyes peeled all the time.